Now, for more, is our political panel, Kristen Hahn, Rock Solutions partner and Democratic strategist, and Maura Gillespie, founder and principal at BlueStack Strategies and Republican strategist. Thank you both for being here. Maura, as we heard President Biden talk about communications with Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, much was made yesterday about DeSantis not taking a call from Kamala Harris, the suggestion that it was seen as political. Arguably, a lot of the rhetoric we are seeing around not just this storm, but Hurricane Helene before it is political. Is that appropriate?
It's not. And unfortunately, we are just weeks away from an election that, is by all accounts razor thin. And so it's frustrating, I think, on the whole, because this is a serious matter. And to play politics with people's lives is incredibly irresponsible and it's dangerous. And I think what the former president has been doing and touting some of this, and his team has been doing, you're seeing people from DeSantis' own team pushing back on some of the conspiracy theories that have been pushed out there on X or Twitter, and again trying to curb it because it could really cause some serious damage. With with Milton coming up here, people's lives are at stake, and that's not hyperbole. That's not being an exaggeration. Mm-hmm. That's what, by all accounts, is what's happening in just a matter of hours. And so to be so reckless like that it shows us what kind of leader would do that. And I think that's going to weigh on people going into Election Day.
It's pretty remarkable here when you consider the stakes at hand. Kristen, not only is Donald Trump saying this stuff, it's everywhere on social media. FEMA is up with a rumor response page, and you've got the White House in overdrive here to try to keep the record straight. What else can be done at this important moment here with a second storm about to strike to set the record straight, to point people in the right direction and let them know what is true and what is false?
I mean, I think the head of FEMA has done a really good job of going out across all the local and the national news stations talking about exactly what FEMA is doing. Somehow Trump saying that there aren't enough people at FEMA, to deal with these crises. That is patently untrue. She's done a good job of being out there communicating with the public, which is so important because people need to know what resources that they have at their fingertips. And I tend to believe that most people, Vice President Harris, Ron DeSantis, as much as I may disagree with him on pretty much everything, this is a humanitarian crisis. We hope it won't be a bad one, but you have to prepare for that. So I'd like to think about everybody's better angels and that, everybody's kind of looking at this and seeing what we can do. But FEMA's done a really fantastic job so far.
Well, as we consider this happening 4 weeks to the day from the election and the political implications here, I would point to the new New York Times Siena poll that came out today that takes a look at Florida, which some Democrats have suggested could actually be in play this cycle. Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris 55 to 41%. It's a 13-point gulf. Kristen, I'm not sure the storm makes any difference at all at potentially closing that gap or widening it further. But what about the other races like Senator Rick Scott, knowing his experience in disaster response, having formerly been a governor? He was there when Biden made a trip to Florida in the aftermath of Helene last week. Does this change the odds for him, potentially less in favor of Democrats who were eyeing a pickup opportunity in this state?
I mean, I think anytime sees a leader who takes control and does a very good job in these types of dangerous situations, and Senator Scott has, demonstrated that he has been able to do that as a leader in his state. Again, don't agree with him on a lot of things. So, elections are all about how people feel about the candidates and what they're doing. So is it going to have an impact? Certainly it could. But, at the end of the day, I think people who are running for office who are currently also in positions of elected leadership, need to look at their responsibilities and take them seriously over politics.
Well, I'll tell you, that Florida number jumped off the page here, Maura. New York Times, Siena College, a 13-point lead. You first want to suggest that maybe it's an outlier. But Nate Cohn writing in the New York Times that he sees it differently in this case, that it might suggest the demographics, the makeup of Florida and the electorate has changed dramatically since the pandemic. How do you see it?
That's an accurate insight. I mean, so many people did move to Florida during the pandemic. They evacuated some of those areas that apartment buildings, and we saw that, that commercial real estate is hurting because so many people have moved out of the cities to find more space, and Florida, better weather. And with COVID, that was, paramount for a lot of people. But I think what's interesting with this poll is, and when you ask the question about, does this change things post these storms? By all accounts, we kind of had an idea that this was going to be a really bad hurricane season. But I think in this election, because it's been so tumultuous and has changed so many times over the last few months, anything that happens between now and Election Day in this country can be pointed to and blamed on Harris, Biden, Walz. And so it's a risk that they know going into this. But the unfortunate part is when you play politics with something that's so severe, and when on our side of the aisle, Republicans have a person at the top of the ticket whose only objective is to point the finger and, stoke fear and anger, that's not productive. And to Kristen's point, we really do need to look for leadership. And I would hope that I do believe what Ron DeSantis is trying to do is take the reins here and push back on the conspiracy theories. And I'm glad to see that, because there are a lot of Republicans in that state, as that poll clearly shows, and they need to know that they've got a leader there that's not trying to just stoke anger and fear for them.
Election Day, is saying I'll put a Republican in my candidate enough, or do they want them, those undecided voters want her to say, I'm going to be way different than the last guy?
I don't know that it serves her well to say that she's going to be so different, considering she is still currently the vice president. And then to the second point, for those voters who are Biden supporters and have been for this whole election season up until these last few months when he dropped out, then what does that say to them if she were just to go ahead and bash him essentially in her efforts to get, the presidency and to get to the Oval Office? So I don't think that would behoove her. And again, unfortunately, in this country, we have a certain vision or a predisposed kind of notion when it comes to women. And they would just, unfortunately, I think a lot of voters would take that to be, she's cutthroat and she's going after, cutting down the president. And so I don't think that there's a lot of positives to doing it that way. But I do think that she's already said that she would be open to having a Republican in her cabinet. And, we saw that at the convention where several Republicans spoke, in favor of her and endorsing her. And subsequently, you've had a couple like Jeff Flake and Liz Cheney come out and say they support her. So you can see a couple viable options that way. But yes, she has really done a lot to say that she is more middle, coming more along to the middle of the road when it comes to a lot of policy issues. But she can't completely abandon the far left, which is, where she started from.
Kristen Hahn, give me your read on this whole day. We're coming off an appearance on 60 Minutes. By the way, that was the full hour for Kamala Harris last evening after Donald Trump decided to drop out. There's also a town hall on Univision on Thursday. This is a big week as the campaign tries to answer to the charge that she's not doing enough interviews or providing off-scripted moments. What do you think of these selections? Howard Stern, Colbert, pretty friendly interviewers, not hard-hitting. We're not really talking policy here. This is more personality, isn't it? Will it work?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call 60 Minutes an easy interview.
Fair enough. More to the point of what she's doing today.
Yeah, no, I think she's going to voters where they are in a number of different media in a number of different ways with different types of hosts. So I think it's a smart thing to do, and she got. She caught a lot of hell for not, doing more mainstream media, prior to the debate, and she's certainly done some sense. But I think, it's a good campaign strategy. Go to the voters where they are, who they're listening to, not just, what that maybe traditional candidates would have done before.
Maura, will it prove to be a mistake in hindsight that Donald Trump did not do the 60-minute sit-down last night?
I do think it was a mistake just because, there's precedent for it. But Donald Trump largely bucks precedent. I think with Kamala Harris doing that interview, I was glad to see that she did take that one on, because she has largely dodged some of the heavy-hitting questions that people want to have answers to. And she does give kind of vague answers sometimes if she answers it, directly at all. But again, so you could have that, kind of a viewpoint of her. But on the flip side, then you have someone who has shown in rally after rally, hour after hour of these rallies of cognitive decline. And so, you're really left with this matter of, okay, who do you trust more in this position? And that's what it's going to come down to on Election Day, not only just turnout, but trust. Who do you trust to be able to put the people around him or her to do this job, to the best of their ability? And I think that that's going to be weighing on people as we get closer and closer to November.
All right, Maura Gillespie and Kristen Hahn, our political panel this evening. Thank you for joining.